Welcome back, children, to a new session. In the last class, we learned about the goals of 5-year plan, such as equity, modernization, growth, self-reliance, etc. Now, why was this 5-year plan implemented under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru? It was to uplift or to bring back the Indian economy to a prosperous economy from the backward economy. And you all know what were the difficulties that India faced in different areas during the period of British rule. You know how was the situation of agricultural sector, industrial sector, demographic condition, occupational structure, and so on. So to bring back the economy to a prosperous economy, government implemented the 5-year plan. Now, during the British rule, you know what was the situation of agricultural sector. Once again, I'll recollect the points. There was existence of zamindari system, then there was lack of technology, productivity per unit was very low. So many problems were faced in the agricultural sector. So with the 5-year plan, what the government is aiming at is to uplift the agricultural sector. Likewise, industrial sector also need to be uplifted. So through the goals of 5-year plan, the government aimed at uplifting all the sectors of economy, mainly agricultural sector and industrial sector, which was prominent during that time period. Service sector is also equally important. So we will see what all measures are taken by the government, what all measures were taken by the government during the planning period to uplift each sector. So let us start with the agricultural sector. Now, once again I repeat, agricultural sector faced so many difficulties during the British rule, such as stagnancy, then zamindari system, low productivity, etc. Now, when the Britishers left India, zamindari system, some of the problems in the agricultural sector was solved, like zamindari system. But still there existed few other problems in the agricultural sector even after the independence. Now let us see what were the difficulties that existed in the agricultural sector even after the independence. Problems of agricultural sector. Problems of agricultural sector. The first one is low productivity. Low productivity. The productivity from the farm area was very low even during that time. So I am talking about the problems which were faced in the agricultural sector even after the independence. During that planning period, government has had to face some difficulties in the agricultural sector. Now the first problem was low productivity. What is the main reason for the low productivity? Definitely due to the lack of technology. Lack of technology. Lack of technology is the main reason for the low productivity. Lack of technology. Then lack of knowledge is also another reason. Lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge is also another reason for the low productivity. Lack of technology, lack of knowledge. The farmers didn't have that much of knowledge regarding the agricultural practices. So that was the first problem, main problem faced in the agricultural sector even after the independence. Now the second problem was disguised unemployment. You have been learning this particular term even from in class 10. Class 10 onwards you are learning this. Disguised unemployment. What is this disguised unemployment? The more number of farmers which are present in the agricultural sector than what is required. Actually, only 6 number of laborers are required in an agricultural farm, but more than that, 8 or 9 are present in the agricultural land. So, 3 of them are excess, that is known as disguised unemployment. What was the reason for the disguised unemployment? You know that during the time of the Britishers' rule, they declined the handicraft industries. So, therefore, a lot of people lost their job in that particular sector and they moved on to agricultural sector. So, the decline of handicraft industries is another reason. So, that was already present during the time of the Britishers. So, the Indian government is planning to uplift the industrial sector. So, during this planning period, this particular problem was faced by the Indian government. The farmers, the people were more in the agricultural sector. That caused for disguised unemployment. Now, the third one is high dependency on rainfall. Farmers had to depend on the monsoon season, rainfall, the amount of the rainfall that they got. There is no other facilities. So, there was lack of irrigation facilities. So, this mainly stresses on lack of irrigation. This mainly stresses on lack of irrigation. Now, next problem was subsistence farming. What is meant by subsistence farming? The farming which is practiced in such a way that the food produce or the crops will be produced only for meeting the needs of the personal needs of the family members, for the personal consumption. Nothing will be more to be sold out in the market. Only for the personal consumption the production takes place. That kind of a farming is known as subsistence farming. So, the amount of the production will be very low. So, only the food grains were produced only for meeting their own needs. Therefore, only subsistence farming was promoted. That means production only for self-consumption. Production only for self-consumption. Production only for self-consumption. Now, there is nothing more than that to be sold out in the market, only for the self-consumption. Now, next one is outdated technology. Technology was outdated. There was no harvesting machines, there was no threshing machines. So, what will happen if there is absence of all these? More time will be taken for the process in the agricultural land. So, there was no technology, no harvesting machines, nothing else. So, more time was taken for the process in the agricultural sector. And the last one, conflicts between tenants and the landlords. Conflicts between tenants and the landlords. I have told you who is a tenant and who is a landlord. Sharecropping, which I have explained to you in the first chapter. What is that? Can you recollect it? The landlords will be giving their land to the tenants. The tenants have to produce on the land, and the crops that they are getting, the part of its produce will go to the landlords. So, if the climate is not favorable, what will happen? The tenants will not get that much of the produce that they expect. Therefore, what will happen? They are anyway bound to give the required amount to the landlords. So, nothing will be left out to the tenants. So, sometimes in the name of that, the conflicts were there between the landlords and tenants. So, these were the practical difficulties faced in the agricultural sector even after the independence. Now, let me tell these points once again. The problems of agricultural sector even after the independence: low productivity, then comes disguised unemployment, then the next one is high dependency on rainfall, fourth one subsistence farming, fifth one outdated technology, and the last one conflicts between tenants and the landlords. So, these were the practical difficulties that existed during the even after the independence, during the planning period. Okay, I hope it is clear to you. Now, Anyway, government wanted to uplift the agricultural sector from this situation because the main aim of the government was to bring out the contribution of GDP to the agricultural sector to a better percentage. Therefore, the first objective or the goal of 5-year plan can be achieved, growth. You have learned about sectoral composition of the economy. That means what? Contribution of each and every sector to the economy. So, government aimed at bringing out more GDP from the agricultural sector to the economy. So, let us see what are the measures taken by the government during the planning period to uplift the agricultural sector. Now, mainly the measures to promote the growth in the agricultural sector can be divided into two. Number one is land reforms. Reforms made in the agricultural land. Now let us see what were the reforms made in the agricultural land. Land reforms include change in the ownership of the land. Change in the ownership of the land. What do you mean by that? In the earlier days, the landlords were very efficient. They owned the huge acres of land. Now, there was agreement between tenants and the landlords. The tenants may be having a small amount of their own land holding sometimes, which will not be, which is not sufficient for doing the cultivation. That is why they are acquiring the land from the landlords, and a part of their produce has to go to the landlords. Now, if they fail to give the produce due to the bad climate or not a favorable condition, the landlords will be taking away the land from the small farmers, because they are big landowners. Using the loopholes, they will be taking the lands from the tenants. So that kind of practices were common during the olden days. So the landowners were the big landlords, were the owners of huge acres of land. Now the government decided to take away the land from the landowners which they acquired from the small tillers, and the government decided to give back the land to the actual tillers of the land. So each and every one will get their own land back. Now, so the land reform involves change in the ownership of the land. That means from the landlords it will go back to the real person from whom they have acquired using their tactics, through abolition of intermediaries and land sealing. So in order to give the ownership to the exact person, what were the two measures taken by the government? Abolition of intermediaries and land sealing. Abolition of intermediaries and land sealing. So the two methods were taken by the government to uplift the agricultural sector. One is land reforms and the other one is green revolution. Land reforms means changes in the ownership of the land through abolition of intermediaries and land sealing. Through abolition of intermediaries. So abolition of intermediaries is one measure and land sealing is another measure. So these two measures comes under land reforms. Now let us see what is this abolition of intermediaries. Abolition of intermediaries. Now abolition of intermediaries, let us see what actually happens. So once again, land reforms means change in the ownership of land through the abolition of intermediaries. Now, abolition of intermediaries. Now, why was this intermediaries abolished? Who were the intermediaries? I told you, landlords, then the tillers and the land. So, who is actually standing as an intermediary between the tillers and the land? Definitely it is landowners. So, landowners, intermediaries will be removed. Therefore, the actual owner of the land will be given to the actual tillers by the government. And I explained you how the landlords took away the land from the tillers. Now with the new government policy, the tillers will be getting their own land. So abolition of intermediaries was done to make the tillers, the farmers, the actual owner of the land. I hope the point is very clear to you. Now, so if the tillers are given the ownership of the land, what will be the benefit of that? That person will be motivated to do the cultivation in his farm because he has the confidence that because that is his land. Now, let us see what change government expect when it transfer the land to the actual tillers of the land. Now, the main objective of abolition of intermediaries are, point number 1, this would give incentive to the tillers to make improvement. Definitely, if the land belongs to the same person, he will work hard to make improvements in his own land. Then comes the next one. Through this abolition of intermediaries, 200 lakh tenants came into direct contact with the government. So, actual tillers of the land will have a direct contact with the government. It is his own land. Therefore, government could find 200 lakh tenants. What a good job done by the government. 200 lakh tenants were in direct control of the government with their own land. It helped to increase the output. Definitely, it is a motivation for the Indian farmers, the actual tillers, to increase their output if it is their own land. Now coming to the difficulties related to the land reforms. But government had to face so many difficulties with related to this land reform. Let us see what is that. In some areas, zamindars or landlords, not zamindari system, landlords continued to own large areas of land by making some loopholes in the legislation. I told you these big landlords, they have a good influence in the government with some people in the government. So by doing some loopholes in the legislation, they could, even now they could own the large area of land. Actually, it will be of tillers, but in some areas, landlords still proved to be efficient and they could keep the whole control of the land with them using some loopholes. So that was the main failure of the land reform. So government had to face that kind of difficulty when it adopted the land reform through abolition of intermediaries. Now, poorest of agricultural labor did not much benefit much from the agricultural farms. So when the land was given back to the tillers, some of the farmers who were very poor, they didn't have enough amount of money even to start their agricultural activities. For such farmers, this ownership given back to the tillers, that concept was not that successful because they didn't have that much amount of finance with them to start their agricultural practices. So for the poor farmers, this was not a blessing. So poor farmers did not get any benefit from this particular abolition of intermediaries. So I hope it is clear to you. Now we will move on to the next land reform, land ceiling. I told you land reform was done through abolition of intermediaries and land ceiling. What is meant by this land ceiling? Land ceiling means fixing the specified limit of land which could be owned by an individual. What do you mean by that? Every person has to own a particular area of land that will be decided by the government. No one can own large area of land as the way he or she likes. Everybody will be given a particular area of land that has to be owned. Therefore, that was a measure taken by the government with regard to the land ceiling. Now let us see how government practiced that. Now, beyond a specified limit, all the lands belonging to a particular person will be taken by the government. I told you, big landowners using some loopholes, they acquired the land, still acquired the land which they could get from the tillers. So when government found such areas of land acquired by the big landlords, government used to take away that part of the land which do not belong to that particular landlord. So more amount of acres of land, more areas of land, if it is found with one particular person, it will be taken away by the government using the measures. So that was made effective. Land ceiling was made effective by the government through this process. Now, through this land ceiling, what was the main objective of the government? to reduce the concentration of land ownership in big hands. Why did government took away the huge area of land from the landowners? In order to avoid the concentration of land in few hands. Otherwise, what will happen? The whole area of land or big area of land will belong to only certain people and others will have only small plot of land. There will not be any equity in the distribution of land. So, in order to achieve the equity in the distribution of land and also to reduce the concentration of land, government did the land ceiling. So, the objective of the land ceiling, what was the objective? To reduce the concentration of ownership in big hands and to promote the equity so that everybody will have the equal amount of land. Now, the next, what was the difficulty that government faced with regard to land ceiling? Here also, like abolition of intermediaries, government found some difficulty with the land ceiling also. Let us see what is that. Big landlords got their land registered in the name of their relatives using their influence. So, what these big landlords did? They again played their game. What was their game? They began to register their land in the name of their relatives. Small plots by small plots they began to register in the name of their relatives using their influence in the government. So, the government in that area had to face some difficulties with the land ceiling. Other than that, it was okay. Okay. So, I hope the two measures are clear. Land ceiling and abolition of intermediaries under the land reforms. Now, in some states like Kerala and West Bengal, to be noted, in states like Kerala and West Bengal, the measure of land ceiling and abolition of intermediaries was successful. Why? Because these states were committed to the policy of land reforms. There the government was very effective to bring this policy of land ceiling and abolition of intermediaries. Therefore, in these two states like Kerala and West Bengal, the abolition of intermediaries and land ceiling was very, very effective. Now we will move on to the next method, that is green revolution. So, land reforms, under land reforms we have land ceiling and abolition of intermediaries, which we finished, and the next method used by the government to improve the agricultural sector was green revolution. What is this green revolution? Green revolution is increase in the production of food grains, increase in the production of food grains due to the application of HYV seeds. What is this HYV seeds? High yielding varieties of seeds. So, increase in the food grains through the application of high yielding varieties of seeds, that is known as green revolution. Now, what is this high yielding varieties of seeds? The seeds which can yield more and more, that is known as high yielding varieties of seeds. Why government adopted this high yielding varieties of seeds? Because in the goals of 5-year plan, one among the goal is self-reliance. India has to become self-reliance, independent. Before that, India used to import the food grains, but now India wanted to be self-reliant. So, it is one among the important goals of 5-year plan. To achieve that, the government adopted the application of high yielding varieties of seeds. Okay, I hope the topics are clear to you. Thank you.